What's up, y'all, and welcome to Loose Ends episode 1 after our draft. A fantasy football podcast for average fantasy football players hosted by Jesse. You do the honors.
Average fantasy players ourselves.
Absolutely. My name is Blake, and I'm your host and current reigning undisputed champion of our Drunken Draft Dynasty League. And joining me today for our first episode is one of my best friends on planet Earth. Let me introduce you to my buddy who towers over the competition here, the gentle giant of gridiron analysis, standing in at 6'7". When this man is not reaching for the championship, he's definitely reaching on his NFL theories. Heavy on the stats, but heavier on our hearts. This man will sweep you up in a whirlwind of stats and conspiracies and probably a bear hug or two. My boy, JJ.
What's going on, everybody?
All right. So we talked about it a little bit, the draft, right? We are post NFL draft and post our fantasy league draft. We want to talk about that a little bit, right? We want to talk about our draft, kind of how it went, and then just a few takes on where we saw players going in our draft compared to some of what the pros are saying, because at the end of the day, we are average fantasy players, right? Let's talk about a few things.
I mean, one thing that we really need to point out, too, is we are still fairly new to the Dynasty world. This is only, our second rookie draft, our third season we're going into?
Third season, yep. We'll be going into the third season total.
So, I mean, we don't have a lot of data to go off of with these, like looking back historically, but I mean, I love comparing to the pros and kind of seeing where we're at.
Right, and that's the point. I mean, how many leagues out here that we're talking to right now are average fantasy players or even less than average fantasy players? This might be year 1, 2, 3. I mean, we've been playing fantasy for 10 years, but the dynasty aspect of it has been, don't even get me started on IDPs. That's different.
Yeah, I got to tell you, that is really one of my favorite parts now. I love the IDPs. I really do.
Which is crazy, and I mean,
I never played, dude. In all the years that we played fantasy, I don't know why. We've always really been, I think, big fans of defense. So I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing, right? You're so used to playing in a redraft league in a sort of, you take a total defense instead of individual defensive players, which changes things drastically, because you might have a bad defense that has such a great player that does well for your fantasy team versus, I want to take a San Francisco or a Pittsburgh or some stacked defense. So it just changes the concept of the game, which I mean, I'm a big fan of. Cool. Let's go ahead and get into our league real quick. Let's reassess. I'm going to go ahead and pull up our league's draft results, and I'll share that here to our screen. Yeah, you can go ahead if you want to share them.
Sure. Yep, there we go.
I think we can talk about the elephant off rip, right? I mean, Jonathan Brooks at the 106 was unexpected.
Yeah, I don't think anybody saw that coming. He did even say, after I went back and watched the episode, he was like, this might be a reach, but Jonathan Brooks. I was like, oh!
Now, the one thing I will say is he does need a running back.
Yeah, we addressed that. He definitely does.
Consensus off the board is Jonathan Brooks is the RB1 in the class, which is crazy to say because he is coming behind Bijan, right? He's coming behind Roschon Johnson. So we really only have a 10-game span to see him at, right? And that 10-game span is pretty crazy because he averaged 114 yards a game, which is insane. But he missed 4 games last season. So to be the consensus number 1 with a 10-game viewing span is, I mean, impressive enough. Now he's going to Carolina, so who knows?
Actually, I don't hate that. And the reason why I don't hate that, and I think he's getting a lot of buzz, is because of the new head coach in Carolina, Dave Canales. He was the former offensive coordinator of the Buccaneers. And we all saw what he did with Rachaad White. No one saw that coming. No one saw, what was he? I think he finished number 3. 4 full PPR.
Travis Etienne finished RB3.
Yeah, that incredible to me. I couldn't believe that. I'm excited, and I think most people are excited for that aspect. Like him going there, I think that he is a really good receiving back. Even though he's coming off an ACL injury, which I think a lot of people were a little hesitant towards, but still he was the number 1 off the board. Regardless of that, I think that One thing that I've been reading a lot about is the fact that running backs, they don't really do that well coming off the ACL injury like the year after, but 2 years afterwards they kind of come back. Or normally, I guess what we've seen from like data and historical data that they do much better in their second year. I'm sorry, I kind of paused there.
Well, right, yeah, your Brees Halls, your Travis
Yeah,
Etienne's, guys
exactly.
like
Thank
that.
you.
Yep.
Devonta Williams, he didn't do that well coming off his ACL last year, but I expect him to bounce back. Maybe not. We'll see. There's a couple of people. I mean, you mentioned those. I think that those are much better examples, but I think, wait, Saquon, didn't he have an ACL injury too?
He did, and he did
After
not
that?
perform super well on his second year back. Or on his
Oh,
first year back. His second year back,
the
he
second year
performed
he
well.
did. Okay, there
The
you go.
only exception to that, really, that we've seen is Adrian Peterson, who was just
Yeah,
a
that
monster.
was unreal. When was that? 2005?
Something like that. I'd have to look.
We'll have to check.
All right, let's go ahead and analyze our draft board here. For the most part, aside from the Jonathan Brooks choice here at the 106, I mean, things fell relatively correct from what our analysis was early on, up until probably the 202, right? Nobody anticipated until late that we were going to see back-to-back-to-back quarterbacks from one team, which, again, trading up to Superflex it's a different animal, right? Quarterbacks matter in a different capacity than most of these redraft teams or one quarterback leagues are used to. What's your take on the 3 quarterback strategy that came from Haji Bear?
I think it's a bold move.
Bold move, Cotton. We'll see how it pays off for him.
Yeah, I think it's bold, but I think it's also kind of a wise strategy because if you look at it, maybe these quarterbacks don't work out, but they're all first round quarterbacks. You know what I mean? So they're gonna get another shot, I feel like. That's with that high draft capital, they're more likely to get another chance even if it doesn't work out where they're at now. So I feel like if he doesn't really have anything with them now, maybe they don't produce this year or next, he can still trade them away, I think, for some like really good draft capital.
I would agree. And the question for me is, obviously the NFL heads know something a little, more than we do. The question for me is, I don't think anybody was expecting 6 quarterbacks to go in the first round the way they did. I'm wondering if that has anything to do with the conversation that next year's draft class at quarterback is not very strong statistically. Now, we saw guys like Bo Nix and J.J. McCarthy kind of come out of the woodworks towards the end of the season. Even Jaden Daniels kind of exploded onto the scene last season. So I'm sure we could see a couple of those guys, but maybe the NFL kind of knows something that we didn't. Look back at 2022. I mean, they had said that was historically one of the worst quarterback classes that we've seen come out, and they weren't wrong. Right? No. Kenny Pickett was the top. He was QB1.
He was the first quarterback taken.
Right, and then you have, Malik Willis was the number 1 guy for a minute, but you're looking at guys like Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett and like what. There was no quarterback that came out of that class. Don't get me wrong. We had some monsters come out of that class at wide receiver and running back, but the quarterback class was shaky at best.
It was.
Sam Howell, I think, came out.
Yeah. Well, he didn't. There were times last year when he played really well for fantasy. I'll say that, but I'm not going to jump on the pedestal and fight for him. I'm not going to do that, but he did do well. I think he played well.
I'd like to talk. So the first round is the obvious, right? Jonathan Brooks going to 106 is the obvious shocker, which allowed Roma Dunze to fall to where he did at the 109. So I think that's the obvious surprise of the first round. But let's talk about round 2.
I will say, hang on, before we jump to round 2,
of course,
I think that the J.J. McCarthy pick was not what I was anticipating. Actually, I didn't think he was going to take a quarterback there because also in all the conversations that we've had with him, he's not a big advocate of having a lot of quarterbacks, but ends up taking a quarterback.
You can't trust the Shmee.
He says things that I don't like. It's just not true.
You cannot trust the Shmi. Every mock draft we did with that man came out different than how he drafted. You cannot trust the Shmi.
No.
There was not one draft where he took AD Mitchell. Not one.
No, I know. I went back and looked. I was so mad because
Not
I
one.
wanted AD so bad.
I trusted nothing from him from the beginning.
I didn't, but I really was not expecting that at all. I had no idea.
So let's talk about round two. I agree. Shmi is Shmi, and we will never know what he's going to do, which is why you and I had said, hey, D-Judge is an X factor here. We're not exactly sure what we think he's going to do. And Shmi is always the wild card. He is the trickster by trade. That is what he does. So we have no idea ever.
Right.
But let's talk round two. Let's go through round two. For you, what is the most interesting or surprising pick do you think of round two?
I mean, I spoke to Kevin and I kind of realized that he was going to go all quarterbacks. And yeah, this is a good quarterback class, but I really like the wide receivers in this class. So I was really actually just surprised at, like I said, what Shmi did at the 205, picking Adonai Mitchell. I mean, I have Anthony Richardson, so my full intention going into the draft was to stack. Even though I have Michael Pittman, I don't care. I wanted them both. I think that offense with Shane Steichen is going to be similar to the Eagles' offense just 2 years ago when they went to the Super Bowl, and it was AJ and Devontae tearing it the fuck up. That's what I look. I'm so hopeful for that. I really think that that's what it's going to be. I'm watching videos of Anthony Richardson throw the ball to AD, and I'm losing my fucking mind.
The interesting thing to me is a lot of teams think that with Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, and now they have Josh Downs and AD Mitchell and Michael Pittman, that they aren't sure if Anthony Richardson can support such a full cast. However, I agree with you entirely in the fact of when we're looking at the Eagles, that was the same year, I believe Miles Sanders finished RB10 that year. So they supported a top 10 tight end, a top 10 running back, and 2 top 10 wide receivers. So
yeah,
it's possible, but it is entirely going to come down to Anthony Richardson's quarterback play.
I think so.
For me, in that second round, I have two. The obvious one is Xavier Worthy falling that far. I understand you were out on him, and Kevin went 2 quarterbacks, so that kind of pushed things down to the right. But the biggest one for me was Trey Benson falling that far. Right, I didn't anticipate him getting past the 205. I think we both thought he was going to go there. The other one for me that's very interesting that I want to touch on because you drafted him is Keon Coleman.
Yeah.
Keon Coleman is an interesting prospect. On paper, he is not the guy. But it seems the Buffalo organization is all in. And the interesting thing to me, and I'm not sure if you're aware, is Josh Allen texted him before the draft. Did you know this?
No, I didn't hear this.
Josh Allen texted him before the draft and said, "You're the guy that I want to throw the ball to." He said, "I want to draft you and you're the guy." So it's interesting that Josh Allen had a say in who that receiver was going to be, especially seeing that AD Mitchell had 11 guys go before him and some of these other big names that we thought could go round one. To see Keon Coleman's name come up there, it seems like it was a Josh Allen influence type pick. So that'll be interesting to see as well.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, I didn't hear that, and that's exciting to hear.
That's just more hype for you.
I love the kid's personality, man. I love that he played basketball. That shows some athleticism. Like, he can get up. He can I mean, I know he has trouble separating, right? But he's physical. He can fight for the ball. He has, what was it, really good win rate for contested catches.
Competitive and contested check.
Yeah.
Contested catches, yes.
Yeah. I love that about him. Let's see what happens. Get him in the end zone, man.
That's the thing for me is that's the only stat that is like off the charts for him. Everything else on paper, like his route win percentage, against press coverage, against man coverage, finding zone coverage. He is not good in any of those categories as far as elite receivers go, but he is a football player, which is the category that matters most, is can he play the game of football? And I think he can.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that paper shit. I'm not. And, I showed you the video of, I think it was the GM, I believe, when he said, good, I'm glad he ran that. What was it, 4.56?
Yeah, something like that.
He's like, yeah. He's like, it'll help us get him. I was like,
Right.
oh, so they wanted it. And I don't know. Now you're telling me about Josh. It's really exciting. So I think, actually, I was really high on him. I was really happy with the landing spot. I know everybody was freaking out about the Chiefs getting Xavier Worthy and the Bills trading back, right? But I think the Bills got their guy, and they got
I love
some.
I love that you brought up Xavier Worthy, because a lot of people are, well, the Chiefs organization, they always try to support so many receivers. Who do you think the WR1 is in Kansas City?
I think it's going to be Marquise Brown.
I love that you said that, and it's interesting to me because so many people have that same
Travis
energy.
Kelce. I'm thinking
Travis
receiver, right?
Right, receiver only. We're not talking.
Yeah,
Obviously,
okay,
Travis
okay.
Kelce is the guy. We got that.
Okay.
Yeah, that we don't need to beat that horse.
Okay.
The interesting thing to me is Marquise Brown has had one season where he's finished inside WR35.
Right.
It's crazy to me to consistently hear just because they go to Kansas City, which is the same thing that I will say about Xavier Worthy. They get all this hype because it's Kansas City, but when has Kansas City produced a elite receiver? Rashee Rice was well on his way in his rookie season until the debacle that is his entire life right now.
And you know what's so crazy about that is I drafted him last year in the 3rd round. And I traded him away. And I watched him do really well, and I was like just crushed. I was like, damn it, I shouldn't have got rid of Rashee Rice. And then, man, Dallas happened.
Dallas is real.
Crap. That was not good for him.
All right, let's jump into our 3rd round here. Same question. Let's go through. I mean, who's your... Yeah, you can, absolutely.
I want to say that I'm really out on Blake Corum, but I was surprised that I know this wasn't a strong running back class like last year's class was, a really good running back class. Blake Corum, yeah, I think he looks good. I don't know. That's a good landing spot with the Rams behind Kyren Williams. So I think him falling to the 210, that's
I think we'll see a very Jamal Williams style play from him. He'll be utilized a lot more in the red zone and short yardage situations. So we'll see how that goes. I'm interested as well to see how that develops over there in that backfield.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about how McVay is kind of like the Steelers, how they just run their running backs into the fucking ground.
We love that.
So, I mean, I'm not saying bet on injuries, but I don't know. I try to always expect them, right? Because they always happen to me. It's inevitable, man. I just pick the wrong players. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I try to.
Let's jump into this 3rd round.
Okay, you go. You start.
We're going to talk about a couple of things. For me, the number one thing that jumps off the page for me, and I love this pick, especially for Mr. Gildo Baggins over there. I love Troy Franklin in that spot. In the 303, I did not anticipate him getting out of the 2nd round, and I love the fact that he got him.
I didn't think that you liked him.
I am not in love with Troy Franklin. I love his landing spot. I love the fact that they took him with Bo Nix. That rapport is already built. But getting him at the 303 is what I love. Mm-hmm. If he would have fallen to me at the 305, I would have snatched him. Again, I take best available. That's how I operate. And Troy Franklin at the 303 is a great pick. A lot of things about Troy Franklin that people are not aware of. Troy Franklin, and we'll touch on this in a bit, right? So Troy Franklin, who's the competition over? Cortland Sutton, who might not even stay, coming up on a contract year. I mean, he's already Bo Nix's favorite. We understand that. He had an 87.3 PFF receiving grade, which is ideal. But he's a numbers guy, right? Him and A.D. Mitchell jump off the page on paper. He was 90th percentile receiver, which he was one of 3 that had a 90th percentile receiving grade. And those 3 are Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, and Troy Franklin. Those are the only 3. And the fact that you're in that same conversation is crazy. 90th percentile for everyone that's listening, right? 41% of 90th percentile or higher receiving grade turn out to be a solid or better prospect going into fantasy football, right? Once you hit that 80th percentile, it turns into like 30% roughly, but 41% or higher is coming out to be a solid or better prospect. So the fact that you got him at the 303 is like mind-blowing. That's a crazy spot for him to fall, and I think that's a great pick, especially for Gildo Baggins, as long as he doesn't trade him away.
Which I hope he doesn't. In his best interest is trade him. If he could get, I don't know, some good players for him. Let's see here. So my pick for the 3rd round is Jalen Polk.
Interesting.
I know that he kind of landed in not the best spot with the Patriots, but he went in the 2nd round, pick 37. That's good draft capital. And I think that even though Drake May is going to take some time to develop, I think that he does have the opportunity to build a relationship with Jalen Polk, because you just touched on it with Bo Nix and Troy Franklin. I think you get the same thing with Drake May and Jalen Polk. I saw them the other day at the Bruins game. They're already chilling, man. That's what I want to see. I want to see my quarterback and my receiver hanging out. That's what I want. So I'm looking forward to that. I think that I did not expect him to fall to the 3rd round, actually. I thought someone was going to take him in the 2nd. But a lot of receivers went in the 2nd round.
I would love to analyze that, actually. So based on the receivers that got taken in the 2nd round right now, who would you expect Jalen Polk to go over? There's only one that I can think.
This is my personal preference. Like, I would have taken him over both Ricky Pearsall and Blake Corum.
Gotcha. I could see that.
Yeah.
I don't think we anticipated Michael Penix to go that early either. Not to say that he would have fell out of the 2nd round. I just don't think anyone expected him at the 204. But I agree. Ricky Pearsall or Blake Corum. Now, don't get me wrong. Ricky Pearsall's landing spot is a little better, and they took him 1st round capital. But I agree. He could have gone above both of those guys. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
would you take Jalen Polk over Troy Franklin?
No, I had Troy Franklin much higher on my board. I think that's a great pick. I didn't want to say, I agree exactly with what you were saying, but I actually, when I was statting out and, watching film on Troy, I was really impressed. I like him a lot. I think he's got that like fight in him. I think people were really kind of big on Rome Odunze, but I was like bigger on Troy Franklin. I would have picked Troy Franklin over Rome. Like, I really wanted him. I don't know why I'm saying that. I wanted him so high and didn't take him. I think that was probably my mistake in the draft. If I didn't take Benson at the 207, it would probably have been Troy Franklin.
Right, which makes sense.
Yeah.
But I mean, given the players that you did select, I wouldn't take Troy Franklin over any of those guys.
Really? Oh, the players I picked.
Over Trey Benson, over Xavier Legette, Cam Coleman, or Brian Thomas.
Yeah, I would. It was tough for me.
I don't think there's any position in there that you were like, or that you should look back and go, oh, probably should have taken Troy Franklin here. I just don't think that's the case.
No, I think I look at it and I'm like, damn, I had the 210, but I gave it up. And
that I can understand.
Yeah, I could have had Troy there. And I when I did have the 210, every like mock draft I was doing, I was taking Troy there. Right. Yeah, but it's okay. I mean, I can't go get him from Gildo. I don't know.
I guess I can.
I could give him something, but I don't know. I don't know what I would pay for Troy Franklin right now.
I don't know either. And that's another conversation I think that we should touch on in a check our next episode. We'll talk about, the value of some guys and the difference between, what they're worth as draft picks versus what they are as an actual player. We'll see how that kind of touches out. Another guy I want to touch on in the third round, just because I was a big fan, and I honestly, aside from Joey, I didn't anticipate anybody taking him. I thought I was going to be able to get him from the waiver wire, is Jacob Cowing. I don't know if you've watched much film on him. He's a dog with a WG. 70% of his snaps were from the slot in 3 straight seasons. He was top 10 PFF grade slot receiver. The only ranked receiver that was higher than him in any of those seasons was JSN out of the slot, which is saying a lot, especially considering 2 of those seasons was with UTEP down in Texas, and he transferred. And he only transferred to Arizona, fun fact, because his son is in Arizona and he was tired of missing first words and first steps and things like that. So he transferred over to be closer to his son. If you look at his paper-wise stats, he's improving. He's a 5-year receiver, right? He's a 5-year college guy. He's 23 years old, but he had a breakout age of 18. I think it was 18.4, but 18-year-old breakout, 5 years improving consistency. His target share was 43%, which is first in FBS in this class. Yards per route run, first in FBS in this class. And I mean, yes, not a favorable position, seeing that they took Ricky Pearsall in the first round, but Ayuk, Debo, we don't know what's going to happen. He plays a very similar Debo type role, a little smaller. He's not as tackle break essential, but the kid's a beast as far as the eye test goes. So I'm very, very interested to see Jacob Cowing.
I'd like to watch some film and check him out. Does he play, or did he play mostly from the slot, you said?
Plays 70% of his snaps came from the slot. And it's crazy because if you look at it, junior year was his biggest year, had about 1,300 yards. He had 7 touchdowns. But he's big play guy, right? He was reliant. I think he was like 19.6 average as far as that goes per play. His senior year, he had less yardage, but he had 90 receptions versus 68, his best season. 90 receptions, but he had 13 touchdowns. So what we're seeing is he's more of a possession receiver. He's gathering that intel to be a better NFL receiver. I thought he was going to go, in the 3rd round, day 2. He ended up being a day 3 guy, mid-4th round. I don't think that changes much, but we'll see what he does.
The landing spot, I think, kind of sucks.
Yeah, the landing spot is what hurts, but we don't know what's going to happen with Ayuk and Debo. We just don't. So that's the one thing I put on here, stash and hold. He's a taxi guy. If you're in a taxi league, he's a guy that I would sit on and just wait, right? Which, I mean, something you and I are not very good at, the sitting and waiting portion of things. But for those that are good at that, Haji Bear and Joey, those guys sit and wait. That's a great spot. And I think in our league, it's a great spot for Joey because he will sit and wait on Jacob Cowing.
Yeah.
4th round. 4th round. Who's your...
Actually, can I touch on one more?
You absolutely can.
Let's see. Roman Wilson. Roman Wilson at the, 306?
This is a pit guy, huh?
I mean... I heard someone go through the Steelers receivers the other day, and they were all day 2 guys. Antonio Brown, George Pickens, Hines Ward. Oh, my God. And then now Roman Wilson. And they're like, they always pick the best receivers, right? I'm not going to say that, but I am really excited about this kid. I don't know. Did you hear his background story about his life growing up in Hawaii?
I did not.
Oh, listen to this story, man. It's incredible. So he grew up in Oahu, okay? And in order to go to the private school, to play football, he had to take a plane every day to get on a bus, take the bus, and then I think he had to walk to school, and he was 20 minutes late every day. And the reason why he had to do that is because his father was a pilot and his mom worked 2 jobs. So this dude is a fucking go-getter, man. He had to get up and do that shit every fucking day. Are you kidding me?
That
And he's in
man
the
shit.
Bucks, baby? Oh no, hell no! I love it. I'm so excited for him. That was someone else I really was like high on. I wanted really badly, but these guys had surprised me with their research a little bit. You know who surprised me the most was Justin.
I was going to say the same thing. Shout out Justin.
He did a good
Especially
job.
not even being able to see the board, just went, let me pull my list, and was just rattling off names that you and
That
I
was
both were
awesome.
like, oh, I like these guys.
Yes.
And I was surprised as well when these guys kind of had jumped out and said, well, is this guy now? Obviously, you know, not able to see the board, but they were saying, is this guy available? Well, he got taken. Okay, cool. But the list that they had was not off par. They weren't taking reaches. These are guys that should have gone in these positions. So not only did they do their research, they were prepared for who should be available in that third round where they had picks first. And I love that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I was really just blown away with this. I think the Brooks thing kind of threw everybody off, and then I was not expecting to have Brian Thomas fall to me. I think like maybe an hour or two before I did one more mock draft, and I was like, what if Brian Thomas falls to me? And when he fell to me, I was like, fuck, I gotta take him. I hate that he landed in Jacksonville, but
well, that was the same thing that happened to me. Once Ladd McConkey was there, I was like, I mean, I have to take him here. Like I didn't like it, but I have to. That's an interesting spot as well. I'd love to touch on that in another episode. I think we'll do another episode of just interesting guys that kind of come about.
Rome, Ladd, and Brian Thomas going like that was really interesting.
I agree.
When did Ladd McConkey get taken?
In the draft?
In the NFL draft.
He's a day 2 guy, I believe. Go ahead and click him. It'll tell us right there.
Well, okay, tell us.
All right, technical difficulty.
All right, hang on.
That's fine. I don't like it. Regardless, that whole receiving room over there in LA with the Chargers is very interesting.
I saw a comment by the new GM that they are basically really confident that Quentin Johnson can break out and be what they see him do. And
I hope when he doesn't.
I don't fucking think so.
I hope when he doesn't, that guy gets fired.
Oh, it's gonna happen. They just keep tossing him out. I don't know what's going on in LA, but it's a dog-eat-dog world for the GM and fucking head coach.
Let's talk about that 4th round.
What's that?
Let's talk about that 4th round.
Okay.
I'm very curious about this 4th round on your thoughts on it, and I'd like to let you go first because I think you know my pick. I've said it 56 times. I loved it. It's still my favorite pick. It might be my favorite pick of the draft. I loved Kamani Vidal. Loved Kamani Vidal. Loved it. Hate that you got him. Love that he went there. Love that he went in the 4-1. I told you numerous times, if you didn't take him, I'm going to take him. I can't tell you enough.
Defensive. You do that with all the running backs to me.
Love it. The PFF grade of 93.2. I mean, he ranks 3rd amongst 47 backs that had 175 touches or more. Ranks 2nd in forced missed tackles at 94. 1st in explosive run plays at 47. He was 8th in missed tackles forced per attempt, which I think was like 0.32. So 1 in every 3 touches, he's making somebody miss. Love that. Here's the biggest thing in the NFL. What is the number one thing that keeps running backs on the field is their pass blocking. And pass block ranked 2nd amongst FBS backs with 100+ pass dropbacks. I mean, the best ability is availability, and he played consistent hard-nosed football for 3 seasons where he did not get hurt. I mean, he's built right, and he's healthy. Not only that, fun fact, the great nephew of the legend Hank Aaron. So dude's got superstar blood. Going to the Chargers with Harbaugh, I mean, he's Harbaugh's wet dream. I mean, I don't understand why this dude will not be a monster if he gets the opportunity. And we saw it. He went and got J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards and all these things, which I think we've seen are just not great backs. But Kamani Vidal can do it all, and I think the one thing that people are saying is, well, he came from Troy. Okay, Brees Hall came from Iowa State. So stick that in your pipe and smoke it.
And guess what happened to J.K. Dobbins last year?
Nah, stop it.
ACL. Bye-bye. So I'm just saying he's probably going to be shitty this year. Gus Edwards. I like Gus Edwards. I've always had a little thing with Gus. I'm glad he's not on the Ravens anymore. Good for him. Thank God. God bless. Listen, he's not. I don't think he's going to be able to carry the load there. And J.K. one leg. I mean, he's literally. How many times has he torn his shit now? I don't even know if he has an ACL in either of his legs.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically Peyton Wilson.
You know what though? Well, okay, there's a difference between like just not having one and then like just getting your shit obliterated.
Speaking of Peyton Wilson, they said day one he was out there calling the defense already, which is a scary thing for a rookie. Good for him.
Have been.
I'm catching Luke Kuechly vibes, and I love it already.
I told you. Luke was the one that came out, and he was like, "That dude is me, and he's taller and faster."
I love it.
I was like, "Oh yes!" I wanted to grab him, but I'm just glad he's on the Steelers, baby. I couldn't be happier. I always like find myself. I'm like, man, I really like. I love this defender. I hope that I hope the Steelers get him, and they fucking end up getting him. I had no idea he was going to fall to the third round. I thought he was.
I don't think anybody did, but the injury history came about for sure.
But you know what? There were great players without ACLs. Like Hines Ward didn't have a fucking ACL. I'm trying to think of who else.
Not a Hall of Famer, but.
Well, you didn't have to bring that up, but he did win 2 Super Bowls, baby.
He does have 2 rings, baby. It's better than Randy Moss and Calvin Johnson. So who's the real GOAT here?
Man. They really fucked Randy. Damn.
But that is my number 1 consensus pick for the 4th round, and I think for the draft, I love Kamani Vidal. He was easily going to be my 410 pick if he made it there. I couldn't justify taking him at 3.5. I also didn't think anybody else had him on their radar aside from maybe you. And sure shit, 401, boom, gone.
I will be honest with you. I did say I would take Will Shipley there, but I was looking at Kamani Vidal, and I don't want to say anything.
As you should.
Yeah, because I knew that like that. Okay, let's talk about this. Okay, like 3rd round, the 4th round, those are my like deep, whatever. Like my little babies who I hope like grow up and fucking fly away from the nest. I don't know.
Well, I think that's the thing too. When we do our mock drafts, we all kind of have a consensus of where people should go in those like until like the 305. There's a general consensus, but after that, it's really like who do we think is going to hit and why, and people that are doing real deep research. And yeah. I think when we even do our mock drafts, we kind of get to the mid 3rd round and we're like, all right, and then after this, let's just click and let it just mock itself out. We'll see what happens because nobody wants to give away, the real trade secrets. But if you go, oh, I'm going to take Jonathan Brooks at the 105, we're like, all right, bro, whatever, and then move on. Nobody really kind of understands, but those late picks, we're not trying to give those away.
I did tell you early on who I didn't know if you want to touch on the undrafted players now, but
we can save that. We can hit a part 2 here.
I was just going to say that I was actually looking at Isaac Garendo at the 401 as well. But I was like, huh?
That landing spot hurts.
Yeah. Oh, for Isaac Garendo?
Depends on what happens with Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell is just a better running back right now.
Yeah, he's been there. He's been in the system.
He's just a better back right now.
But I do have injury concerns, and same thing with CMC. So I think that there is an opportunity for him to. It's kind of same thing with Kamani Vidal. I feel like just waiting and hoping they get the opportunity, and then whatever opportunity they get, they just get those fucking long bomb like takeoff downhill touchdowns.
Agreed. Is there anybody else in this 4th round that you were like, I like this pick or was shocked at?
I'm going to be honest. I'm not crazy about the defensive player picks because it's like, honestly, you might as well take whatever offensive players you can get because you can pick up any defensive players off the waiver wire, basically.
So I want to touch on that as well.
Okay.
Edgerrin Cooper, you would have had to pay for. in this scenario. I would have immediately put in a waiver wire for Edgerrin Cooper. He is the consensus linebacker 1 coming out. He landed in a great spot. They changed up the defense. I think he might be defensive player of the year next year, or excuse me, rookie defensive player of the year, not defensive player of the year. That would be crazy. If he is, then clip it. But aside from that, I think he's going to be rookie defensive player of the year, or at least in consensus top 3. The one thing I will say is
really
love Haji Bear to death, but Jared Verse isn't even the best edge guy to come out of this class.
I completely agree, and that's what I'm sorry. This is the point I was trying to make. Laiatu Latu out of UCLA. I am just waiting to really see what happens with this dude. I'm just gonna grab him. I know he's an edge.
Dallas Turner, another one that is just
that's also so. Linebackers they are really, I think, important in our league. Right?
It was just weird to me to see. Not weird. I mean, I get it. If you believe, you believe. And he went to the Rams, which is a great spot for a defensive lineman. Love it. It was just unexpected, and I get it. 4th round, take the flyer, take the guy that you think might pop. It's the 4th round, whatever, the 408 especially. But I just was, as soon as it happened, I went, he's not even the best at that position here. So that's crazy to me.
Yeah, true.
But I'd like to wrap things up right here. We went through our top picks here. I want to just go ahead and say we'll call this part 1. We'll jump right into a part 2 right after this. We'll touch on some undrafted free agents that we picked up. We'll talk about the professional grades that was given to our draft grades afterwards, and we'll talk about our consensus picks between you and I and kind of how we graded our draft afterwards based on what we know about our league. But aside from that, I mean, any closing remarks, Jesse?
No, it was great talking with you, man.
Love that. For everyone that is watching right now, hug your mom. Say what's up to your dad, talk to your best friend, tell someone that you miss them, whatever the case is.